the Lincoln Memorial here in Washington tonight, the official inaugural festivities kick off with a red, white, and blue band. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting tonight from our Inauguration Week headquarters in Washington. Good evening. We'll be here for the next 3 days covering the ceremony, style, and substance as the United States of America inaugurates President Bush and Vice President Quayle. First, not all of today's fireworks were in the sky. There was the bombshell in the latest U.S. trade deficit figures. The Commerce Department reported that this nation's trade gap in November was 22% larger than in October. That was a far more dismal performance than analysts had predicted during the campaign. Keep in mind that some economists believe that the trade deficit may be the single most important element in determining this nation's economic future, short and long range. CBS News business correspondent Ray Brady looks now at the dilemma this Reagan-Bush legacy poses for Bush-Quayle and the country they will govern.
For the new administration, a familiar headache on the nation's docks. Foreign goods still pouring into this country and worsening the trade deficit.
Our two fundamental problems are productivity and quality. We're not nearly as productive as we need to be, and we're not producing products that are as good as they should be.
Result, in October, Americans bought $10.3 billion more from foreign nations than we sold to them. But in November, the red ink shot up to $12.5 billion, the worst level in 5 months. Americans bought fewer Japanese products, but many more European products. Their love affair with foreign goods continuing.
It takes a while to switch from the foreign goods to the domestic. We are seeing that trend developing, and we'll hope to see better numbers in the coming months.
Yet even in London today, where cheaper dollars push up prices for American tourists, they were buying European.
I've been shopping in London because when I get back to the States, the Americans consider it to be a great thrill to purchase things from England.
In Japan, consumers are trying to buy more foreign-made goods, but
BMW.
they're buying European. BMWs, Mercedes. Still, don't blame the Japanese. U.S. airlines are big buyers of the French Airbus. And with a growing American economy, U.S. businesses have been expanding by buying European capital goods, machinery, and the like. In fact, it was this buying by business that made the big difference in today's trade figures.
So if an American wants to buy a capital good and wants it quickly, he goes to a European.
The trade deficit's still not as bad as it was in 1987, but many economists feel that worsening trade figures will be one of the major economic problems facing the new administration. Ray Brady, CBS News, New York.
Trade deficit in the headlines, inaugural signs of the times all over the nation's capital tonight. The inauguration, of course, is Friday. But the ceremonies and celebrating started today. A grand entrance for George Bush and Dan Quayle to kick off the first official inaugural event at the Lincoln Memorial this evening. An F-14 jet flyby for a 21-plane salute. A precision skydiving team. All helping George Bush set the tone and the agenda.
It is the ambition of my presidency to make these 1,000 points of light shine brighter than ever before. And where today there is darkness, let us work together to bring light to shine on all of God's children.
The audience helped set the tone, too, with 1,000 points of light display for the cameras. Most of the lights distributed courtesy of the Bush Inaugural Committee. There was carefully orchestrated symbolism throughout the day. George Bush made a point of speaking to more than 200 of the nation's teachers, saying again he means to be the education president.
And I do mean it, and education will be on my desk and on my mind right from the start every day.
Amid the talk of high ideals, the hard realities of heavy, high-tech security for the inauguration. Some of it out in the open, some hidden. And at the recently revitalized and refurbished Union Station tonight, a side-by-side display of the haves and have-nots. Outside, activist groups setting up a soup kitchen for the homeless. Inside the station, it's all aboard for a lavish $1,500 a plate pre-inaugural dinner. There were other signs of the times, changing times. The nation's capital tonight, on the verge of the Bush-Quayle administration. Stockton, California authorities say they now know the identity of the gunman who went on that deadly rampage yesterday on the playground of an elementary school he once attended. They know he had a long criminal record, and they know the weapon was an automatic rifle. Police said, quote, "You use for one purpose and for one purpose only, to kill a human being." What authorities don't know is the motive, why the killer killed. David Dow has our report.
They reopened Cleveland Elementary School today, and little by little, students and parents came back to talk with counselors to confront the midday terror that yesterday turned a playground into a killing ground. For families such as the Kennedys, there was a relief that somehow their child was spared.
It's very scary. It's a nightmare. Just thank God he's here today.
Authorities revealed that the schoolyard assailant, Patrick Edward Purdy, had himself attended Cleveland Elementary during his first 3 years in school. But that did not explain his rampage or anything else about the 26-year-old drifter in combat dress who shot himself after killing 5 and wounding 30, all but one of them children. Police say his clothing and weapons were marked with words such as freedom, PLO, and Hezbollah, a Middle East extremist group. Though not a military veteran, his motel room revealed other evidence of a man, as police said, with a military hang-up.
There had to be 100 little plastic army men, a couple of jeeps and a tank that were spread out through the entire room.
In all, police say Purdy fired more than 100 rounds and carried enough ammunition to fire 100 more. In hospitals, the victims and their families began to talk about it today, their vivid memories of the assailant.
But he was in a stance like you see soldiers, type of military stance.
In some families, there were victims and near victims.
Oh, I tried to run, so it tried to shoot already, so I run more.
Today, school officials went door to door with assurances of safety. About a quarter of the students returned to class, some reluctantly, almost all with questions that will likely never be answered. David Dow, CBS News, Stockton, California.
And still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, correspondent Juan Vasquez on fire and anger in Miami, and Bob Schieffer on presidential style and the efforts to recast George Bush's image into that of an outdoorsman. Police tonight are hoping that hundreds of arrests may hold off the looting, arson, and rioting of the past 2 nights in some sections of the city. But activists warn decisive action is needed from investigators into the interracial killing they say sparked the trouble. Juan Vasquez reports.
The second night of violence left 7 people shot and more than a dozen stores and warehouses sacked. The shelves empty, the owners bitter.
Be my store, mister. $250,000 I got in the store, mister, 5 years.
Hemden's store was looted by people he recognized as his customers. This furniture warehouse was completely stripped. Jittery store owners had armed themselves to protect their businesses, a target of black frustration and resentment against outsiders.
It's wrong to burn a person's place out, but how can you get people to sit up and listen to you if they don't listen to you? You got to tell somebody, and this is the only way some blacks know how to do it.
Let go, move it!
This time, the trouble spread to Liberty City and other parts of Miami. The county and the city mobilized every available officer to deal with the emergency. Today, police began to arraign some 250 people arrested last night. And despite police objections, the city created an independent review panel to investigate Monday's shooting of a black motorcyclist by a white officer. Police treatment has been a major complaint in the black community, and the mayor said he wanted to go further.
Wholesale sociological, psychological testing of police officers to determine which ones are already inclined to be violent.
Even as Miami's troubles deepen, fans continue to arrive for Sunday's Super Bowl. The trouble has been confined to relatively small sections of the city, far from hotels and the stadium. but players from Miami have been asked repeatedly about the action on the streets instead of the action on the field.
You know, I've been trying to explain to some of the other players that this kind of thing don't go on every day, and it's too bad that it happened this week because a lot of people are going to get the wrong idea.
The police have not released anyone arrested in last night's disturbances. They hope that by keeping them in jail for one more day, they'll discourage more trouble tonight. Juan Vasquez, CBS News, Miami.
The U.S. Supreme Court today overruled more than 150 federal judges who were refusing to abide by new, stricter sentencing guidelines from a congressional commission. The Supreme Court justices ruled 8-1 that the new guidelines are constitutional. These guidelines give federal judges less discretion in setting sentences and generally impose more jail time for crimes. Today's ruling means hundreds of federal prisoners will now have to be re-sentenced.
Is this any way to spend a weekend? Get away to Marriott's 2 for Breakfast weekend, where you can be alone, together, relax by the pool, or try our fitness room, dine and dance the night away. Through April 1st, just $59 to $89 per night, not per person, depending on location. A hearty breakfast for 2 is included. Marriott's 2 for Breakfast weekend from $59 to $89. Call 1-800-USA-WKND.
Succeeded in providing Muammar Gaddafi with his own chemical weapons plant. From the head offices of Imhausen Chemi on the edge of the Black Forest, the middlemen set up a dummy medical company named Pensau at this warehouse in Hong Kong. From Pensau's purchasing office in the West German port of Hamburg, shipments marked for Asia were diverted by Belgian shipping agents to the north coast of Africa and ultimately the Libyan desert town of Rabda. The middlemen took advantage of West Germany's export laws one observer here described as filled with more holes than Swiss cheese.
The same ministry here in Bonn that is supposed to be responsible for enforcing German export laws is also charged with promoting German exports. The list of German products that require an export license is short, and there's virtually no control over German-owned companies that are based outside West Germany.
In recent days, Kohl's government has promised to tighten existing export laws, but analysts here warn against expecting any sweeping changes in a country dedicated to the belief that, above all, business is business. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Bonn.
My son Icky got the Cutlass Supreme SL because it has front-wheel drive, FE3 suspension, and because tests prove that the new T-Bird LX and Cougar LS just couldn't run the slalom as fast. That kid, he's got all the moves.
I learned it from you, Ma.
Introducing Total Raisin Bran. Other Raisin Brans have only 1/4 as much vitamin nutrition. And eating a Raisin Bran with only 1/4 the vitamin nutrition you could get is like having Mount Rushmore. Hey. With only one president. New Total Raisin Bran is the only Raisin Bran with 100% of 11 vitamins and minerals. Total nutrition has finally come to Raisin Bran.
When we go on vacation, I take a bottle with me. If his back acts up, I know Metrin's definitely going to work.
I'm a 5th grade teacher, which means big headaches, which means Metrin. Sometimes I wake up with bad headaches. I keep Metrin right next to the bed.
Metrin's made for tough pain because it's made with ibuprofen, the same medicine as in Motrin, and nothing's proven faster.
Metrin takes the pain away fast. What more can you ask for?
Metrin really works. Nothing worked for me before Metrin. Nothing.
When the pain gets tough, get Metrin.
In his appearance today before a group of teachers, President-elect Bush said he would start delivering on his campaign promise to improve education. Many people who opposed Bush in the campaign, and some of those who supported him, point out that he is a product of privileged private schools, not American public schools, and that his policies toward education reflect that. Mr. Bush and his advisors reject that notion. With all that as background, Bruce Morton has prepared a report on one of the education programs the Bush Quayle team is promoting.
Kathleen Burt is running to her first grade class at the Adams School in St. Paul, Minnesota. She may be the wave of the future in American education. Kathleen is in a Spanish immersion program, no English spoken in class. But the unusual thing is that her parents chose to send her here. The Burts live in suburban Roseville. They chose a school in the city because they liked its Spanish program. They could have chosen any public school in the state instead of going where the school board said. They like that.
With open enrollment, we're able to make the choice ourselves about where we want to place our children and what is an appropriate educational situation for them.
Choice, as it's called, is in its second year in Minnesota, its fifth year in the city of St. Paul. School officials like it partly because of parents like the Burts.
It sure helps an awful lot to have parents at the outset saying, I chose this school. My child has chosen this school, and we have chosen to make this school successful for our child. Wow, does that help educators?
Not everybody in Minnesota likes the idea of choice as much as the Burt family. Here in the Westonka School District, there are plenty of people who don't like it at all.
It has a severe impact on a budget when approximately as many as 10% of your students may leave.
Smith School District has about 2,500 kids, and about 200 have said they may leave. When they leave, they take their share of state aid with them, so the school loses money. Some are leaving because the district twice voted against raising property taxes to improve the schools. Smith fears a downward spiral.
A further loss of students, a further loss of dollars. There will be, a time of reckoning where can we continue to provide that which we're providing now.
What if competition does force some schools to close? Is that bad?
It is very possible that there are going to be some schools and or districts that essentially fold under consumer choice. And it's very possible that they are the schools that should be closed.
The debate is national, not just in Minnesota.
By abandoning a school, we're not addressing the problems. In other words, we're running away from the problems.
Society needs to ask itself, is it such a terrible thing for a bad school to go out of business? I think, frankly, no.
It's educational perestroika, introducing competition, free markets into the public schools. It has powerful friends in the new administration.
Almost without exception, wherever choice has been attempted, choice has worked.
A key problem with America's schools is that they are over-regulated, over-bureaucratized, and lacking in any kind of incentive within the schools to try to improve themselves.
Nobody thinks choice will solve all of America's educational problems, but many think it can help. Boston, whose schools suffered under court orders and busing, is gearing up for a modified choice system consistent with racial guidelines. One problem, choice rewards active parents like the Burts.
It hurts uninformed families. The more informed the families are, the better deal they're going to get.
Boston is planning for videos, parent information centers to help parents choose wisely.
We're struggling with that. And it's something that we need to find some answers to, but I don't think we've found all those answers as yet.
With knowledgeable parents, it can work. Just look at Kathleen Burt. Bruce Morton, CBS News, St. Paul, Minnesota.
Where's the burning feeling?
Here.
For that heartburn, nobody does as much as Extra Strength Malox Plus. Where are the gas pains?
Here.
For that gas and indigestion, nobody does as much as Extra Strength Malox Plus. Its doctor-recommended formula neutralizes more than any leading antacid, and it dissolves gas. Where does it hurt?
It doesn't, thanks to Malox Plus.
Ask your doctor about Extra Strength Malox Plus.
Great news. I don't need surgery for my hemorrhoids. The doctor said they're not that serious. He said use Preparation H.
Preparation H helps shrink swelling of tissues as it often relieves pain and itching for hours. Preparation H, also in new cream.
How fast does Dristan nasal spray start to work?
Faster than Dolly can pick up a $5 tip.
Dristan works fast to relieve nasal congestion, even sinus pressure. For relief,
faster than a frog on a hot rock.
Try Dristan nasal spray. It's faster than...
Wow.
What you eating, Dave?
Nothing, honey.
Oh, you can tell me.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch.
Looks good, Private. What is it?
Nut and honey. Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch.
When you've got the special taste of nuts and honey all wrapped up in a hearty crunch, what more can you say? Here's what. New Nut and Honey Crunch Biscuits. Crunchy biscuits of wholesome shredded wheat with that special nut and honey taste inside. Wow.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey.
Now in biscuits, too.
Crunch.
More signs of the times here in Washington tonight. Changing times. Emotions and some tears flowed as Ronald and Nancy Reagan got a farewell from the professional and dedicated White House staff. Moving slowly, the Reagans paused to talk and touch individual staff members, many of whom couldn't seem to believe it was finally over. Starting noon Friday, George Bush as president and Dan Quayle as vice president will set policy, set the tone for their administration, and try to set an example for the nation. CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer reports tonight on George Bush, efforts to change his image, and what a difference a style makes.
When Americans saw how much Ike liked golf, they took up the game with such a passion it triggered a boom in golf course construction. The Kennedys made kids popular again, and boats and touch football. The touch LBJ brought was down home. A presidential style rubs off on all of us. By relaxing himself, Gerald Ford helped us relax after Watergate. The Reagans brought Hollywood to the Potomac, but from here on expect less of that, more of this. Children, grandchildren, and all kinds of outdoorsy things. The Bushes are not, however, the kind of Texans who spend a lot of time roping steers.
There's no Billy Bobs this time around. They're all William Roberts III.
There'll still be a lot of rich people around, but the White House won't be the same as when the Reagans lived there.
It's old money as opposed to new money. And what that really means is that the rug will be just as expensive, but now the dog is going to wet on it.
George Bush is the first president we've had since Kennedy who never had to get ahead. He was ahead from the beginning.
Even so, friends call the Bushes comfortable people, comfortable with themselves, at ease with others. Barbara Bush gets a lot of credit for that. Already she's being described as a new kind of national role model.
Maybe there won't be quite as many anorexics in this country. Who knows? Barbara Bush is herself, and she's proud of herself, and she looks great.
It's like having Mom back in the White House.
And there are already predictions that a new first fisherman will revive interest in the outdoors the way Ike revived golf.
He's not a, as he put it, a couch potato. He doesn't particularly enjoy watching sports. He's very much more like Kennedy, I think, in that sense.
But does style really make a difference in the life of the nation? Old Washington hands believe in Bush's case, it will.
Well, I think that we'll get more simplicity in government than we had. There was a certain regal cast to the Reagan administration.
He got out of the car and is walking down the avenue at Pennsylvania.
When Jimmy Carter tried to take some of the pomp out of the presidency, he discovered Americans like a little pomp if it isn't overdone.
When Jimmy Carter became president, he wore a cardigan sweater, and everybody in the United States rose up in furor and said, Mr. President, don't wear that cardigan sweater. That's for the golf course.
The problem, of course, is that once anyone moves into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, it's hard not to become regal.
The Bushes will not be the Bushes. It will be the President and the First Lady. And they will get used to it in a very short time.
In truth, that's how we like it. We want our presidents to be down to earth, but we want them to be special, too. While we never hesitate to tell them when we think they're wrong, deep down we hope they'll do us proud. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Washington.
And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. With the inauguration party starting to roll, Dan Rather reporting tonight from our inauguration headquarters in Washington. See you here tomorrow. Good night.
The Lone Star's back in Washington celebrating with something old.